Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. Before we get into this week's combo, you might notice that I've got the Porsche VGT on my shirt. And I got this because last year I was part of the Porsche Esports Challenge USA and all of the competitors got to wear the shirt. Well, I've made it in again. So I'm going to be competing at Laguna Seca at the end of September. And I figured that if you watch these videos, you might be interested in that kind of thing. So I'll be making some videos. I'm going to record a lot. I'm going to hopefully get a lot of footage there. And so I'll be sharing that with you. And also on Instagram, I'll be sharing a lot of stories live. But anyways, that's a few weeks away. For this week's race, it's Race B. Race C is a one make and it's a lot of fun, but since it's a one make, there's no meta. Race B, however, is a very unusual meta. The Pug and one of the old Ford GTs are the meta car at Daytona, and so an old enemy of ours happens to be the anti-meta car this week. Let's get into it. I absolutely never thought I'd be saying this, but the GR Supra is the anti-meta car of the week. Since it's Daytona, really the only thing that matters is top speed, and of course a little bit on acceleration. So the Pug and the old Ford GT are the cars. The second old GT might have done well, but it's pretty much the same car. So I decided to go with the Supra. The car that's usually way too powerful for its own good is now a distant third to the meta cars. Taking a look at the leaderboard, there are literally only 3 cars in the top 100, and only 3 of those are not the Pug or the Ford GT LM Race Car Spec 2. So, of course, we had to go with the third one, because the Pug and the GT are pretty much identical. I think I could get a better time. In fact, 2 people did with this car, but when I saw that I was position 69, I decided to leave it. Nice. Starting off close to the apron, we want to get ourselves wide before we get to this flag light here, and when we get to this point past this line on this little crack in the ground, that's when we're going to start braking. I like to aim just to the right of this wall in the distance as I get to full brake and use Gran Turismo's magic ABS to turn in slightly. Get to second gear and start trail braking before you go off the track, down to first and then back up before you hit the throttle, but at this line, if you're about in the center of the track, you're in a good position. Get as close to this inside tire wall as you possibly can and be very gentle as you get on throttle in second gear. You can slide out here really easily, so again, be very, very gentle on throttle. Be very careful on the curbs because even though you might feel like you have really good traction, you can still slide out there pretty easily. Take note of this post right here on the left. That's not your braking point, but you need to know exactly where that is. This little dot on the ground is your braking point, but knowing where that is in relation to that post and the other posts as well as the lines around you are really important because this dot on the ground is nearly impossible to see if you're following someone in the race. Brake in a straight line, getting down to second gear, and when you pass that access road on the right, that's when we're going to start turning in. Before you get to this yellow curb, dip to first, then of course back up to second before you get on the throttle. Take time, be patient, and make sure that you just get good grip and get on that throttle really early. If you slide out here, it can really, really kill your momentum. Tracking out all the way is totally fine, but if you hit that curb, it's really easy to slide, so it's probably better to try to keep a little bit of a tighter line. Our next braking point is a little past the middle of this access road on the left, and it's this mark here on the ground that will serve as your braking point. Again, we're going to get down to second gear before we turn in at all, but our goal is to turn in just slightly so we can make it all the way to the edge of the track, hitting an extremely late apex on the exit. Of course, like with all of the slow corners, we want to wait until we're in second gear before we get on the throttle. And of course, be as gentle as you can because every single one of these corners can be deadly with the Supra. As you can see, I had to do some corrections there. Once again, we're looking for the access road on the right here, and these little cracks are where we're going to start braking. Get down to second gear as fast as you can and turn at the end of the yellow curbing on the right. We want to clip this yellow curbing on the inside of the left, and we want to get on that throttle as soon but as gentle as we possibly can. It's really bumpy here, and we're going pretty slow, so as you can see, I got a little bit of oversteer. It's really easy to get that oversteer, and it will kill your momentum. The goal here is to get on the throttle as early as possible, even if you have to go really wide, because this is a very long straight. So early throttle. Stay low on the banking here. If you go high, it just takes too long and you'll really slow yourself down. So just stay really low until the banking starts to flatten out, and then you can go wide to the outside of the track. Keep your eye out for the numbered boards on the right. When you get past the number 2 one, you'll see this digital flag, and right after that, right before the 1, that's when we're going to start hitting the brakes. Get to 4th gear and immediately start trail braking in. You can put about half of your car in the grass, but any more will give you a penalty. Notice also that I'm fully off the brakes so I can continue turning in a little bit more unhindered by the brakes. Dab the brakes just a little bit as you change the direction of the car and cut this curb just like this. Continue decelerating until you're halfway between the two curbs, then get back on the throttle really gently, cutting this curb and making sure that you're mostly on this curb. It's really easy to get a penalty there, but you can just kind of play with the margins. It's not exactly clear exactly what gives you a penalty. If all went well, that is essentially the end of the lap. A lot of people end up going really high on the banking because, of course, it makes sense from doing other kinds of time trials that you don't want to steer very much, but anytime you're really high in the banking, it increases the distance that you're traveling, so it's actually much, much slower. And in fact, at the very end, you want to just hug the apron just like this. As soon as I pass the start-finish line, I go wide all the way up here to this digital flag sign, and then of course we try to brake in mostly a straight line. Use first gear to rotate, and when you come out, of course we're going to use second gear to accelerate out, and it's very easy to slide the car, so be very, very careful on the throttle. You can brake deeper and try to get a deeper line so you have more time to accelerate, but in general, if you go too deep, you're going to lose too much time doing that than you'd ever make up by accelerating for a longer time to the next braking zone. With that said, it's definitely worth experimenting exactly how deep you go in before turning in and getting on the throttle. You obviously want to get on the throttle as early as you possibly can, and you want to stretch those acceleration points or the periods of acceleration, but if you go too far in any extreme, then usually you just waste time. Getting onto the oval is interesting because you just really want to get on the accelerator as early as you possibly can. Even if you have to go really wide there, you generally end up going faster by the time you're back on the line. And so especially if you're trying to chase someone and you're trying to get their slip, by getting on the throttle early and then getting in their slip later, you can actually gain even more speed. So it's kind of interesting. Again, it's worth playing with. Carrying as much speed as you can, as well as getting on the throttle early here is important, so I try to carry as much speed as I can till the middle of the bus stop, and then of course accelerate from the second half on out. Like I was saying in the breakdown, by traveling on the low end of the bank, you're traveling a much shorter distance and you will actually end up lapping faster than if you go really wide but turn slightly less. The loss because of how much longer it is on the high line is way too great to make up for the lack of steering, so just stay tight. So I'm going to start this off by saying that I don't think it's impossible to do well with anything except the meta, but it is probably more difficult than it has ever been in any of the daily races to do anything with a car that's not the meta. Even with the third fastest car, there's such a huge gap between the two cars, which I think are the meta cars. It is so ridiculously difficult to get a good result that I almost admitted defeat. With that said, there were still some really good moments, and had luck gone my way, we could have definitely pulled off a really good result. I've actually had pretty good results, but none of them really showcase what you would need to do or what you could do with the Supra versus these cars. This race had more than a few examples of what you could do with the Supra. Race A also features a meta car and potentially an anti-meta car, but there are two reasons that I didn't want to do Race A. One is that there's no SR and DR. Actually, it might just be SR, but either way, if you're not actually improving your matchmaking placement, then it's not super interesting. But two, Race A is generally, and this is a generalization, just where lower skilled drivers go. So we're focusing on B. Now that corner, I felt bad about that. That guy had turned in, and I think he expected me there. He could have hit me a lot harder, but I don't think he had anywhere else to go. I couldn't slow down anymore after I dedicated myself to that corner, but in the end, he's still got the position anyways. On this corner, however, the Supra can dive into the corner a lot farther, a lot deeper than the other cars. That Ford GT I don't think saw me, but again, he didn't hit me too hard, and of course we still continued to give each other space. Contact like that is to be expected in Gran Turismo, unfortunately. Things like that are also to be expected. There's going to be a lot of chaos in these races, especially considering the fact that this is almost a one-make race. It's a two-make race, and the pace is so similar between the meta cars that there's just going to be a lot of incidents. Unfortunately, one of the main things that you're going to focus on is just making this a race of attrition. If you can simply stay safe, other people will take themselves out. And that's not exactly a strategy, but since it is a reality, it is something that you can do to make sure that you get a good result. Drive clean, drive safe, and you will most likely gain multiple positions. Now, despite the fact that we got a better exit out of the bus stop, he had slip. And since it's a meta car with slip on a meta car with slip on another meta car, there's pretty much nothing we can do. But the good thing is we did stay relatively close. We didn't lose more than, I'd say, maybe a tenth throughout this entire straight portion. And so if you can get close enough, you can take advantage of that and outbrake these guys. Like I mentioned before, it's an unfortunate thing to rely on, and you obviously can't rely on it all the time, but this is actually a top split race. And if there's going to be chaos in top split, there's going to be chaos everywhere. And as long as you can position yourself correctly and take advantage of it, you can end up gaining positions, assuming people are going to drive you cleanly. I really liked this because Flash got, obviously he had a compromised exit, and then Mossman didn't really know where to go because we almost became 3 wide, but we still managed to just slow ourselves down and give each other space. And even though I lost out there, I was able to pull off this late brake move. Unfortunately, it looks like Flash missed his braking point, but again, there's another position we got just by staying clean and staying careful. And this right here is actually exactly where we can start showing off what the Supra can do. It's not the only thing the Supra can do. It's not the only place you can make a move, but it is a very, very good place to make a move. The Pug isn't going to be able to brake as deep as the Supra, and it's not going to handle quite as well. And since he did get a compromised exit there, I don't believe he had slip. We did have slip, so we are actually able to pass or at least get up next to one of the meta cars when we're on the straight. As we're approaching the bus stop, it's really important to make sure that you're going to give people space if they do brake late. But since he was all the way behind me by the time we entered, we took the normal line and we were able to get a really good exit, even better than him because he had a compromised entry. Despite the fact that we also had a compromised entry, the Supra is a better handling car, so we were able to get the best of that situation. If you look at the delta between myself and Mossman, despite the fact that I got a much better exit, he was able to start pulling on me, even though he was a half second behind. I did move over just for a brief second trying to give slip to the guy next to him, because if you can get 2 people behind you next to each other, it's going to really compromise their ability to take the corner really well. But that didn't actually work. Just defending like normal on the inside did work though. So again, another thing the Supra can do, even though the cars are going to be able to catch up to it really easily, the Supra can still defend into T1, which is really important because it's definitely going to be faster when it comes to the midfield section. Like I keep saying, we've got really volatile meta cars, and they're going to be really close to each other. I actually think Nebu is in the non-meta GT, but it is also very, very good. I decided not to choose that one because it is close enough to the meta car. It pretty much just seems like you're driving the meta car, and that's kind of against the spirit of the anti-meta club. So that's why we chose the Supra. I mentioned in the beginning that I wasn't able to get any good races. I did this race dozens of times off stream, and to be quite honest, it's just not that pleasant doing it in an anti-meta car. If I didn't feel obligated to provide this service to you guys, I just wouldn't have done this. But I know that a lot of people do enjoy this race, and a lot of people want a non-meta option, so we're going to push through. I did say as well that I wasn't able to get a fully clean race, and you're going to see exactly why. But once again, we're defending against Mossman. Mossman has a run. Mossman is a very good driver, he's very controlled, and we were still, despite the fact that we were completely hindered by the car in front, we were still able to defend, maintain a good line, and get a good exit. With this train of meta cars in front, luckily they're battling, which you're going to see all the time, so it did slow them down just a little bit. But even though I've got the slip, Mossman has the slip on me, and he's definitely going to be a lot faster by the time we get to T1. And that T1 is exactly why I was explaining that I couldn't get a good race. And despite the fact that the chaos can help out, it can also completely hinder you, which you're about to see. This is a really volatile corner, and despite the fact I was completely next to Turkish Airlines, he either didn't see or didn't care and put me in the tire wall, and that was the end of my race. To show you it wasn't just a fluke being able to pass the Pug into the bus stop, here we have another driver, same car, and pretty much the exact same situation, though it does look like the Pug actually had a little bit of slip from the Pug in front of it. We were much closer, so the slipstream effect was much, much stronger. We were able to get close, we had a little bit of overlap, brake deep, don't go off our line, he doesn't go off, and we kept it clean. I didn't save the rest of it, but yeah, we maintained this position until the end. And for our final little race highlight, I want to show you again against the other meta cars how powerful this car can be, especially through the bus stop. It is definitely superior. They were obviously battling a little bit too, but we were able to go through much, much faster than they were. They got a pretty good exit. Nebu was right on Taboto, but despite that, I was able to maintain the position right behind them I believe Tabata also probably had slip from the guy in front of him, even if it was just a little bit, but even being 2/10 back, we still had enough of the slipstream effect that when Nebu was passing Tabata, we were able to continue creeping closer, and we were able to pull off this little move. Whenever cars are too wide going into a corner, especially if your car handles better than either of them, it's really easy to follow one of them through, and since the person is already giving space to the other person they're battling, they're automatically giving you space if you stick to the bumper of the car that you're trying to follow. Again, we were able to pull that off. Collider Tom was unfortunately not being really fair with Nebu, and because of that, Nebu almost went all the way out the track. I don't know if Collider Tom did that on purpose, but that was pretty dirty right there. Since we already had the inside line going into this next deep braking corner, we were able to really easily maintain this position and then exit really cleanly, and we were able to pull away from Nebu there. I know I sound like a broken record, but unfortunately this race also ended in tears. We were able to get onto the oval and maintain a pretty good position in front of Nebu and the other guy, but since those two metacars were working together, Tabata unfortunately just pushed me entirely off the track. He ended up rage quitting directly after that, but I'm not even going to show it. That's actually about all we're going to show. Again, this has been a pretty painful race, and I know some of you guys just want to do the anti-meta car, but it's weeks like these. If you want to race, I'd suggest just using the meta car. Thank you again for watching my video. If you like what you saw, hopefully you'll leave a like and subscribe. And if you're interested in following what I do for the Porsche Esports Challenge, make sure you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and you can find me on Twitter as well. I love you very much. Thank you guys for supporting, and I'll see you next week.